What is going on, guys? Christian from the Lay and Pray MMA podcast. Not joined by anybody this week, but that's okay. We're going to run it solo. We're going to go back a couple weeks just because we didn't get to do a video in reference to our results from UFC 271. Obviously, that was the fight card that was headlined by Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker. Co-main was Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa. And real quick, we'll just take a look at some of the fights that we had picked. Obviously, Kyler Phillips got a big submission win. That was one of the fights that we had discussed. Roxanne Modafferi went out like an absolute warrior, as the dogs are in the video now. Roxanne Modafferi went out like an absolute warrior. She didn't get the job done. It was a split decision on the judges' scorecards, but in actuality, it was a unanimous decision for Casey O'Neill. She remains undefeated, and she looked fantastic in that fight. Obviously, I think the biggest thing would have been getting a finish, would have been, more of a statement. But at the same time, Roxanne is never out of a fight. She's went out on her shield, and it was awesome to watch her throughout her career. And I'm glad that such a nice, humble person like her was able to realize her dream and made it to the UFC. And she even said, my dream isn't to be a champ. Really wasn't to be a champion. It was just to make it to the UFC, and she did just that. So good for you, Roxanne. Headlining the preliminary card was Andre Arlovsky versus Jared Vanderaa. And I had picked Andre in this fight, and he looked phenomenal. He's, again, like I said in our last video, he's just an ageless wonder. He looked great. His striking was really put together well. When you take a look at his significant strikes, there were parts in that fight where, like, if you were to take a look at the statistics like I just did, Andre was winning that fight, but if you look at the actual total strikes and everything, he did get outstruck, and there were no takedowns. There wasn't really much ground game, but I think it was like octagon control was huge. That was significant in the fight, and he is still going at it in 40s. He looks awesome. It's brought to you by a little drinky poo, little screwball and cream soda. So excuse me. To kick off the main card, it was Bobby Green versus Nasrat Haqparast. One of the things that I said was I think Bobby Green he's turned into the guy that's no longer he doesn't really have those consistency issues anymore. Over his last few fights, he's looked absolutely phenomenal. Even in his loss to Rafael Fiziev, I picked against him in that fight, and I think he could have won that fight. It was kind of a toss-up. And he showed dominance in his fight with Ally Quinta, where he stopped him, which is not an easy thing to do. And then in this fight with Nasrat, his jab, he leaned on that jab heavy, and that was probably the biggest difference in the fight, because obviously Nasrat was able to put some stuff together, but Bobby just leaned on the jab, and it worked out super well. He was confident, and that's going to lead into what we're going to discuss here in this episode with his fight, because Beneil Dariush had to pull out, as obviously some of you know that, because that fight is on Saturday, so a couple days from now. And Beneil Dariush ended up getting hurt, and I think he either sprained his ankle or broke his ankle in training. And so Bobby Green stepped up on super short notice and just shows that he's a thug. Obviously, he ended up winning that decision against Nasrat Haqparast, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful fight, beautiful performance, and I'm glad that Bobby Green, a guy who has been around, he was in Strikeforce when Strikeforce was purchased by the UFC, and he actually gets his time to shine. And even though it's on short notice, against a really tough guy in Islam Makhachev. I'm sure there's going to be chances for him to show some, show some flashes. To continue, Alexander Hernandez lost to Renato Moicano by submission. And I had a feeling that what I had said in the video, our last video, was I feel like Alex was he was faster. I honestly feel like he's the better striker still. Excuse me. And Renato Moicano just put it on him. I know Renato is I would say an underrated striker because he is a good striker, but it ended up going to the ground. And that's where I was saying that I think it's going to be an issue if it ends up going to the ground, which it did. And, Renato was able to capitalize on that and got the submission. I believe it was a rear naked choke. So, good on Renato. That's a big win. And next up was Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson. And I picked Jared Cannonier to win this fight. The biggest thing was he was going to have to withstand the takedowns. Obviously, that first round for Derek, I think he attempted like 12 takedowns in the first round and got I think 1 or 2. Throughout the whole fight, he was 3 of 13. Jesus Christ, excuse me. Sorry. Throat is dry. He was 3 of 13 on takedowns. And Jared Cannonier, he withstood. He didn't gas himself out, whereas Derek Brunson gassed himself out in that first round. And Jared Cannonier just withstood the pressure, was able to land a nice elbow in the clinch, was followed by a backhand. I think it was his left hand, and then rocked him, and then was able to finish him on the ground with some ground and pound, dropped some elbows on him. And it was a dominant finish. One that was absolutely 100% worthy of the next title shot against the two guys that fought in the main event, which was Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker. And the co-main, Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa, was one of the most fun fights I'd seen, and it was awesome to see heavyweights just throwing caution to the wind. And Derek Lewis had caught Tai a couple times in that first round. I mean, they had clipped each other, but it didn't really look like Derek was phased that much by it. And Tai Tuivasa, he did kind of, he was wobbled a little bit, and then he was able to withstand and pulled through. Ended up taking it into the second round, and both guys were still swinging. Tai Tuivasa was able to get into the clinch, also landed another beautiful elbow, and dropped Derek Lewis just face down. So that was a beautiful win for Tai. Hopefully he shoots up into the top 5 at this point, and he can get some big name guys. I'd love to see him in a fight with Ciryl Gane. I'd love to see him in a fight with perhaps Stipe, just to test himself a little bit. But it's all going to be dependent on what Stipe wants to do. Who knows? Stipe might be done. I sure hope not, but he very well could be, just because we haven't really heard much in reference to him since he lost to Francis. And then in the main event, it was Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker, which was back and forth, 5-round. It was like a chess match. It was, very calculated. Robert Whittaker didn't throw the right hand at all. And I think it has to do a lot. I mean, listening to commentary and then some videos that I watched later after the fight, I think it had a lot to do with the fact that he just didn't want to get caught with counterpunch like he did in the first fight, twice in the first fight, end of the first round and then, or end of the first or second, and then, the finishing blow, the finishing combination, that sequence. So for me, it was, while I was doing live score updates on Twitter, so if you guys didn't know, we have a Twitter, Lay and Pray MMA Podcast is where you can find us on Twitter. So go ahead and follow us there as well. But I personally had it 3-2 Robert Whittaker. I felt like Robert Whittaker pushed the pace for 3 of the 5 rounds, and He was able to land takedowns. Obviously, he wasn't able to do a whole lot with the takedowns. He wasn't able to get significant damage done or attack, like significantly attack. At one point, he was able to take Izzy's back, and he didn't even lock in, his legs around his body and really like pursue a finish in terms of a submission. But that the left hand worked really well for him. I believe he was landing a jab. Just it was snapping Izzy's head back. And for me, like I said, personally, I had it 3-2, but I even posted on my live score. I could see it being 3-2 Izzy. And sure enough, that's the way it was scored, was 3-2 Izzy. So good on Izzy. It looks like the next fight is going to be him versus Jared Cannonier, which was something that Israel Adesanya had said that that's a fight that he would like at some point. Obviously he's fought Marvin Vettori twice. He fought Yoel Romero. He fought Robert Whittaker twice. He fought Derek Brunson. The biggest names, I guess, fought Kelvin Gastelum for the interim title. So up in the top of the middleweight division, when you think about it, really Jared Cannonier is the main guy that sticks out as, top of the top, the cream of the crop. And then Darren Till. Darren Till is another one that obviously he hasn't been able to reel off some big wins. He's lost to Derek Brunson. He lost to Robert Whittaker. So in terms of his fights at middleweight, and he got the win against Kelvin Gastelum. So I think he's 1-2 at middleweight, but he's still a big name, still a big personality. He's a big draw, especially for the UK crowd or for the UK fans. So I would love to see that at some point. As soon as Darren Till gets healthy, that's definitely a fight that I would love to see, just because they're both long guys. Both are really good strikers, and I don't really think that would go to the ground unless Darren Till all of a sudden developed like a really good ground game. But I really don't think it would ever go to the ground. It would just be a striking match. Probably something very similar to like his fight, Darren Till's fight with Robert Whittaker, with how close it was, and it really all came down to the takedown in the 5th round. So, last week, obviously, it was supposed to be Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. That was supposed to be the main event for last week's, but instead that's going to be the, I believe, co-main event for UFC 272, which is highlighted by Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal, which is going to be a phenomenal fight. So then that moved Johnny Walker and Jamal Hill up to the main event slot. Some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about in terms of like things that really stuck out. Joaquin Buckley ended up getting a win over Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And I think the thing that stuck out the most was that Joaquin Buckley had brought the Detroit urban survivalist technician or whatever, the guy that's all over TikTok, all over Facebook for just doing like urban survival stuff, and he's just cringy and he does a lot of stuff. And I know Joaquin Buckley, I think he came out and he basically said, the reason why I did that is because it was going to just draw attention. So, if they both fed off of it and they both benefited from it, then kudos to you. You won the fight. It's not a distraction. So, or it's not the biggest distraction because people weren't really talking about him in terms of your performance. It was more based on how you did. Jim Miller's another guy who seems like he's never going to go away. He got another TKO over Nicholas Mota, and he looked phenomenal. And I think this is like the resurgence because he's the guy that they want him to be essentially like a gatekeeper, but he's the guy who's not letting anybody get through. So it's awesome to see Jim still putting on good performances. And, yeah, I'm just really happy for him. I'm glad that it's working out for him. Another one that stuck out, Kyle Dawkins versus Jamie Pickett. Kyle Dawkins was able to pick up another submission, and I think Kyle Dawkins ended up, it was a rear naked choke, I believe. And in that fight, he fought, again, like I said, Jamie Pickett. Jamie Pickett tapped at the last second, and the reason why he tapped was because the squeeze was so tight, his tongue was sticking out, and he almost bit through his whole tongue. So he was tapped out with 1 second left because he felt like the squeeze was so hard that he felt like he was going to bite through his tongue and like bite his tongue off. So that's pretty freaking insane. And it's awesome because Kyle Dawkins is on a roll. 11-2 so far. He's got big wins. I think this fight with Jamie Pickett, which was at catchweight, and then he had another big win over Kevin Holland. So good on him. And then in the main event, Johnny Walker versus Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill, obviously, his only loss came to Paul Craig, which was by submission, where his elbow dislocated. That was like in one of our earliest episodes that we recorded. That fight with Paul and him happened, and Jamal Hill looked sensational. He ended up getting the knockout, like just clipped Johnny Walker right on the temple and dropped him. Kind of scary, actually. It was a beautiful sequence of strikes, and then the finish, it was just kind of scary to see him just like freeze up and fall backwards, hit his head on the cage too, which is another thing where it's like, yeah, that's, you're not hitting your head on the canvas, but at the same time, that's probably not good for your neck to just be like cut like this. Jesus Christ, my dogs. Hey, what the hell? Sorry about that, people. Dogs trying to establish dominance, and they're both females, so. I think with Johnny Walker, he was that guy that, he was like just a freak of nature, and he put on amazing performances. He did flashy stuff, jumping knees, spinning attacks. He was unconventional, and it was hard to understand like what he was gonna do because he would just throw the craziest shit out there. But then he ended up hurting his shoulder, dislocating his shoulder, celebrating a knockout. Then he got knocked out by Corey Anderson, and he changed camps, and he went to Ireland, and then he suffered, I think, obviously he lost to Jamal Hill, but he got knocked out by Corey Anderson. He lost to Thiago Santos in a really boring fight. He beat Ryan Spann. He lost to Nikita Krylov. He beat Misha Serkinov, which, I think that was the fight in which he hurt his shoulder. But, he's a guy, he's 18-7 right now, and it's kind of like, where does he go from here? Just because it's gonna be a hard road to get back, because 205 is pretty stacked. It's pretty deep. And some of the guys that are at the top right now, I really don't see it. Maybe Anthony Smith comes back and gets that fight, but I think he's waiting on fighting Rakic, which I know Rakic and Jan Blachowicz are supposed to fight. So we'll see what happens. But Johnny's got to fix something. He needs to. I don't know if it's a change of camp again, or but he needs to establish just better fundamentals with striking, I think. And obviously that's easy for me to say because I don't do MMA, I don't fight, I don't train, but I watch enough of it to see things, and I don't think I'm a professional by any means. I want to clarify and make that abundantly clear. My outsider perspective, my fan perspective is that he needs to mix something up and maybe not be in Ireland at John Kavanagh's in Conor McGregor's gym, but go somewhere where he can develop a little bit more, because he's 18-7 right now, and I just don't know where he's going to go from here. And I would hate to see him go into the PFL or Bellator or wherever, Eagle FC, whatever the case might be, and not really get that chance that when he first got into the UFC, he shined like a friggin' star, and I was like, this guy's a beast. and it's just kind of that star's dimmed a lot. So, all right. So, moving into the fights this weekend. This is the main event where Bobby Green ended up stepping up for Beneil Dariush, and he is fighting Islam Makhachev. And kudos to Bobby Green, by the way. Like I said, the guy's a freaking G. He's a gangster, and I'm really hoping that he can really put it together. And even if he doesn't win, I just hope he puts on a great performance, just because I love Bobby Green. He's a stud. In the preliminary card, some of the fights that stood out to me, Alejandro Perez versus Jonathan Martinez. Those two guys are beasts in the featherweight division, so pay attention to their fight. Also, Terrence McKinney versus Fressiem. Terrence McKinney is coming off of that 7-second knockout. And he, obviously we didn't really get to see a whole lot of him. So that's one of the main fights that I'm really looking forward to in terms of the preliminary card. Hopefully, Terrence McKinney can put on a good enough performance, and we can see a little bit more. Even if it goes, into the first round and he still gets a finish, hopefully we can just see a little bit more of his game, so that way he can hopefully be on a main card of a fight night, or even get onto the preliminary card of a pay-per-view, because he's fun to watch. I've watched some of his earlier stuff outside of the UFC, and the guy's super entertaining, and I would just love to see, and he's super humble, so hopefully he gets the opportunity to really put on a good performance. Hopefully he has a good dancing partner. Kicking off the main card is Armen Petrosyan versus Gregory Rodriguez. Armen Petrosyan is a guy who fought on Dana White's Contender Series. He was able to get a finish and got a contract. And Gregory Rodriguez, I think he's picked up 3 wins in the UFC. Let's see here. 2. Sorry, this is his 3rd fight in the UFC. But he has 2 wins thus far. So he fought Dusko Todorovic, won a decision in that fight, and then is coming off of a TKO performance where he defeated Park Jun-young. So I think in this fight, let me go back here. I think in this fight, I'm going to go with Gregory Rodriguez simply because the guy has experience. I think he's a little bit older than Armen. Oh, no, he's actually younger than Armen. So Armen's, starting a little bit late here. 6-1, 31 years old. Got a contract from Dana White's Contender Series, or he's getting a shot off of the Contender Series. And the guy's 31 years old, so he's essentially about to hit that prime of his career if you look at fight prime. I'm going to go with Gregory Rodriguez simply because he is a guy who has that experience. This is his 3rd fight. Armen Petrosyan hasn't had that opportunity yet, except for the Contender Series. But Gregory Rodriguez has shown that he can, obviously, he's been in a decision, and he's also gotten a finish. So I'm going to go with the guy who just has a little bit more experience. And I think guys like Armen, if he proves me wrong, that's fantastic, because that shows that, he's the real deal, and it doesn't matter how late he started or how late he's getting his opportunity. He took full advantage of it. But for me, I'm going to go with Gregory Rodriguez. In this next fight, it's Arman Tsarukyan versus Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez is an absolute beast. He's coming off of a knockout win over Thiago Moises, who Thiago Moises fought Islam Makhachev and, essentially went the distance. Got, I think, KO'd or TKO'd in the 5th, late in the 5th. But he still hung around. Even though he was getting his ass kicked by Islam Makhachev, he still hung around with him the whole fight. Joel Alvarez made pretty easy work of him. And Arman Sarukian, his only loss in the UFC thus far is to Islam Makhachev. And I think it was on short notice too. So I think that's one that Arman wants to get back just because he took the fight on short notice. And I'm almost certain that he went the distance. I think it went the full 3 rounds. The big thing in this fight, though, is going to be the fact that Arman is significantly shorter and it has a significant reach disadvantage. But if he's able to, keep it inside, and, both guys are high up in terms of the amount of fights that they've had, 17-2, 19-2, haven't really suffered many losses. So I just think Arman, considering what he has done in the UFC, the fight that he had with Islam, the fact that, he's trying to be that next guy, and he's 25 years old. The guy's young and hungry, and Joel Alvarez is not much older at 28. So both of these guys could be guys that we see for an extended period of time. Who knows? This might be, just one of the fights that we see, and this could be another, second fight or even a trilogy fight down the road, just because both of these guys are still relatively young. For the women's fight in this next one in the flyweight division, Ji Yeon Kim versus Priscilla Cachoeira. In this fight, I don't think that this is going to go to the ground at all. I think it's going to be primarily standing. G hasn't rattled off much in terms of like her last few performances. I don't think she's even gotten a win since like 2019. It's been a while. But it was, she lost to Alexa Grasso. She lost to Molly McCann. She was supposed to fight earlier this year, and that got canceled. I'll go with Ji Yeon Kim in this fight. Strictly, I would say the biggest reason why is, number one, she's the betting favorite, so obviously the odds makers know something I don't, and also I don't really know enough about in terms of Priscilla to make a real calculated decision here. It's not going to be an in-depth decision. In the co-main event, Wellington Turman versus Misha Serkinov. Right now, in terms of the odds makers, it's pretty even. There isn't a heavy favorite or even a slight favorite. It's even. Wellington Turman is a young, hungry kid, 17-5 right now. Misha Serkinov has been around a little bit, 34. Misha Serkinov has a significant reach advantage at 77 inches to Turman's 72. And this is a fight, Wellington hasn't fought since August of last year, where he beat Sam Alvey. Before that, he came off of a first-round loss to Bruno Silva. And then before that, he lost to Andrew Sanchez in 2020. So the guy, like I said, he's young. So maybe he's able to put it together. He's able to pick up a big win here against Misha Serkinov, who's a pretty big name in the division. Because you look at, like, Misha Serkinov, I think he dropped to middleweight. Yeah, he did drop to middleweight because he was fighting at light heavyweight. Lost to Ryan Spann. Lost to Krzysztof Jocko. His last win, he was the guy who got starched by Johnny Walker. I say starched. He lost to Johnny Walker. But his last win was against Jimmy Crute in, 2019. So for this one, I'm going to go with Wellington Turman. I'm going to go with youth here. I've said it in the past. I'm not ageist, I promise. I know I've gone against guys a lot because of their age, but I believe that just younger, hungrier fighters that are still trying to solidify themselves and solidify their name in their division and in the sport, they're the guys that are going to shine more often than not, unless you're fucking Matt Brown or Jim Miller or you name it. I mean, I picked Andre Arlovsky, so I guess for me I'm doing pretty good in terms of selecting guys with age. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Wellington Turman in this one. I don't know specifically if it's. I don't know. I'm not gonna pick a way in which it ends, just because I don't know. It could either be a long drawn out decision, or it could actually be, a knockout or a TKO. I don't know if it'll go to the ground at all, but if it does, I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens. In the main event, it's a catchweight bout because Bobby Green's stepping in on such short notice. At one point, he said last week he was like 195 pounds, which, he fought just 2 weeks ago. So he gained that much weight in a relatively short period of time. And right now, Islam, number 4 ranked in the lightweight division. His last fight, obviously, he defeated Dan Hooker with Kimura, behind the back Kimura. And he is he's the heavy favorite in this fight. Minus 900. Bobby Green's a plus 600 underdog. I'm kind of interested in this fight, and I was really excited about this fight because we got to see a lot from Bobby Green over his last 3 or 4 fights. Just with his fight with Rafael Fiziev, which could have gone either way, his fight with Al Iaquinta, and his fight with Nasrat Haqparast. We've gotten to see significant improvements, and he's getting better with time. He's getting more precise. His striking, I want to say his jab was hitting 70% or 75% of the time. He was on fire with his jab in that last fight. Obviously, Islam, he's got that Dagestani mindset where it's takedown and smash, work for submissions or ground and pound. He's, Khabib Jr. And it's going to be interesting to see because Bobby Green does have a wrestling background, but, it's not the same. The way that we wrestle in the States is not the same as in Dagestan or in Russia. But, all it takes is Bobby catching, Islam with a nice clean shot, and that could be the end because we've seen Islam. Islam's lost. I think he lost in his UFC debut where he was winning a majority of the fight and he just got caught. So, I don't even know if this is a 5-round fight. I think it got moved to a 3-round fight strictly because Bobby Green's stepping in on short notice and his last fight was a 3-rounder. So I think we're gonna see flashes of brilliance from Bobby. I honestly think Islam's probably gonna do what Islam does. Islam, I'm gonna say, is probably gonna get a submission finish. I don't see him knocking out Bobby Green. He's not a great striker like Dustin Poirier, who I think was the last person to finish Bobby Green was Dustin Poirier when Dustin moved up to lightweight years ago. Years and years ago. So, I'm going to go Islam in this fight. Bobby's going to put up a great fight. He's going to have flashes. He's going to have moments. But Islam is just, he's had a full camp. He does what he does every single time he goes out there. He does takedowns. He does good ground control. He applies the pressure like Khabib was known to do, like all those Dagestani guys do. And I think at some point he'll probably, my guess would probably be gets him with a rear naked choke or some sort of submission is what I'm going to go with. I would say probably rear naked choke or a triangle. But I love Bobby Green, so I just wanted to make that abundantly clear that I love Bobby Green, and I hope he is able to show just some brilliance and some flashes because he is an exciting fighter to watch. Let's take a look at next week's fight card. Obviously, we've got Jorge Masvidal versus Colby Covington. going down in T-Mobile Arena. Co-main is Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev. Then we've got Edson Barboza versus Bryce Mitchell. That's going to be a fun one. Kevin Holland versus Alex Oliveira. Kevin Holland's making his welterweight debut. And then rounding out the main card is Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. Why he keeps getting main card shots, I have no fucking clue, but whatever. Another good one to look out for is going to be the Marina Rodriguez versus Yan Xiaonan fight. It's number 3 versus number 4 in the strawweight division. So depending on the performance that either one of these girls puts on, it could be, hopefully one of them get a shot at Rose Namajunas. And then in the early prelims, wow, man. Okay, so in the early prelims, we're going to see Jessica Ai versus Manon Fiorot. And Manon, I believe she's the one, she's just dropping chicks left and right. She's a beast. Awesome striker. Jessica Ai has fallen off significantly since that devastating loss to Valentina Shevchenko. Obviously, Tim Elliott, another guy. He's going to be fighting Tagir Ulanbekov. And Tim Elliott was another guy that was on a tear there. Ended up winning the Ultimate Fighter. Had a fight with Demetrius Johnson where he put him in significant danger. Like, caught him with the... I want to say caught him with like a guillotine or caught him with a darce. And it was deep. I think that was the most danger that Mighty Mouse was in at any point in his career. Even including his loss to Henry Cejudo. And then up until he went to 1FC and ended up getting finished in that fight in 1FC, his last one. And then rounding it out, Brian Kelleher versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I can't remember. Is that Khabib's brother? I know that, Nurmagomedov is. Oh, sorry. So no, maybe it's his cousin. Yeah, I think it's his cousin. Sorry. I know Nurmagomedov is, it's like a stereotypical, or it's like one of those names that you hear. So, here in Dagestan all the time, I'm sure. But Brian Kelleher is, that's going to be a fun one. The fact that those are on the early prelims is kind of sad. Some of those fights, I'm like, man, those should be on the prelims, or, main card's pretty stacked. So I wouldn't really change much in terms of the main card, but like prelims, like, Marina Rodriguez should be at the top there, and Yan Xiaonan. And then you should at least have, Brian Kelleher and Umar be in the early prelims towards the top, I think. But I'm sure there's a method to their madness. So I think that's going to do it for me. Guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. It was just something quick to kind of recap the stuff that we missed from the last couple of weeks, kind of give a recap in terms of the last pay-per-view that we didn't get to do a video on. If you're listening to us in podcast platform, then please make sure to go over and check out our YouTube channel, which is Land Prey MMA Podcast. Again, on YouTube. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you can see whenever we post new content. And then if you're listening to us, or if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to go over to our podcasts, which is on Anchor, it's on Spotify, it's on all kinds of, like, Google Podcasts and all kinds of stuff. And make sure to go and check us out there, because we post episodes in podcast platform too. So if you don't want to watch YouTube videos and you'd rather listen to it in podcast platform, then check us out. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, talk to you guys later. Thank you. Bye.